I hate you. I hate what you stand for, which is an outright perversion of the idea of standing up to power. Because you don't stand up to power. You slunk away from that power. On route.
سلام تخطاتلتي ناي همبول ميديا نلوم معانتي زبلنا يستفلالي زيناتات نابخاتكم كنبرينا شير لايك سبسكرايب مقبراي ترسعوا سناي مكتال
سمير الكبت بعزو فلتت عتيقة بتركك حيلي مستر نايس عدماس بعمقت كلالي نعبيت كي دكاس قايدني
سلام تخطاتلتينا يا همبول ميديا نلوم معانتي الات اسران شمونتن ورح سلسته زبلنا يستفلالي زيناتاتن تنتنتاتن أزيو أقداسي زبهال أرستات نايلوم معانتن تحستوتاتن حيزنا لكم مزينا لنا نحمدو عبودات'ዮም كم زبله هبوب صحافي جيف بيرس زرخبنا يحد صحف له إرترا حيل إلكتريك زملكت زوص حبريتا نجبسي السودان بناي حمدو ناشودن بيت فردي انتي كم زبلن زوص له شير لايك سبسكرايب بمقبار يترسعوا سناي مكتالك إيري
ننوز زواتات سنعفة عد قيح صرنان ومع عينا قلوت الذهب أبسل استجازات تكبر زلو مكفافلي حل إلكتريك 9 ميتاويت كم تزازم تكاليزو نتسرح زمرح زلو إنجنير عوبا جبريل كاستين يرينا بذهبو حبريتا من جنايت مكافلي النوطة كاب حرقيقو تبقيسو بدك أم حارة زحلف مسمر كم زخونة بمدكاس تعرفو زلو سرحات مستعففة أقلوت كم مزجمر أرديوم كاب كوبانيا لمعاتن هنتاتن بادمه انجينير قبل هو رئيسهم بوغانو اتصراح مس كوربوريشن حل الكتريك ايرترا متحبار زعمام زلو مخانو بمتقاس اب وفت احد عامت كم زبله عبي بروجكت متكبارو مرأيات تطريو زلو ناي مغبار عقمي كم زخونه حبيرو مزي اب استاساسر زينا حزبي محضرات كبابي هدامو عنابور حينبا حشمله تخوندع مالويا درعان او هنن ابسراح توافيرهم نزلو اولات يتبابعو كم زلو وكيل ارينا افليتا
إذا هاجر فليتيا مع عطوتاتا كل جزء رحواتهم حبراوي مكببار بزلوا من قدي إذا هاجر مزخون يكون سب ويون أكل بشرك الند كسرح إيات دلي أبمت أي علماوي محدران أهجراوين ناي فاينانس تكالاتن كاب إيرترا زمهارو بوزح نجارات هالو شحوكا إذا هاجر التركبلو تحلالاخي زوباوي جيوبوليتيكاوي كونتاتن تلو مشارختي أبايتا بممصا عقور عقمن أقداسنت هانات تصمدون كريئو يقبا بيت صحفت ودب حبرات هاجرات دما أبز مدايزي كتحقاقز دلويو عبيتي حسابات عبيتي عقور عقمتات نمت أي أرحيقة بمتقمات أب إيرترا زلو عقور ناي توريزم عقمتاتن عدلاتن كريئي باهيو زبلاني إذا هاجر أزيا تصبغتيا هزبا دما فحشون تقبال قاشانيو ባህሊ ኣብዛ ኣዝዩ ፍሉይ ክኸውን ከሎ ዘይተበርበረ ሃብታም ጥንታዊ ታሪኽ ኣብዚ ኣዕለቕሊቑ እዩ ዘሎ ዝጠንተወ መስጊድ ኣብ ኣፍሪቃ ኣብ ኤርትራ እዩ ዝርከብ እቲ ዝገርም ሰባት ነዚ ኣይፈልጡን እዮም ብዙሓት ሰባት ኣብ ኤርትራ ዝርከብ ኮራል ኣይፈልጥዎን እዮም ከምኡውን ዘይተተንከፋን ዘይተበከላን 360 ደሴታት ኣለዋ ገማግም ቀይሕ ባሕሪ ሰፊሕን ማራኽን እዩ أبز حلف ورحي بزح بتحت توريست أب إيرترا بعيننا رئيناينا أبز هاجر حق أني عقر عقمي نمعبالة زحم بتوريزم هاللوم
Vice General Secretary. Self-reliance is the order of the day, and it is valid both in the present phase of our liberation struggle and for the future society that we intend to build. In saying this, we do not forget that during our war there will be much destruction. But already at this stage, the problem of construction of an economic structure is fundamental and cannot be postponed, as today's struggle is at the basis for our society of tomorrow. For this reason, the front works hard in the economic, social, health, political and military fields. Everything being based on the principle of self-sufficiency. To resolve the economic problems of our people, to give them a prosperous and tranquil life, We must build a society that is free from exploitation of man by man and independent of foreign aid. If we do not rely on our own energies and resources to solve our problems, economic and otherwise, we will find ourselves depending politically on someone, which will hinder us in waging our national liberation struggle. We must start solving the economic problems of our society in order to reach a higher level and make greater efforts for self-reliance. Our principle of self-reliance is based on these fundamental considerations.
أنا إرتراوي أخبر كلهم إرتراوي مننا كابكال التفليل بخد فوديو على بصحي غير حيجلسني زي مننا تزفلي بدم بمسوعته بتاريخ ببهلي بجغرافيا جلسك على الخوف.
According to the Forbes currency calculator, these are the strongest currencies in Africa. 1. Tunisian dinar.
بمسارات فورد زتباهله حدا ناي ميديا وينا غازيطا زوصو بعلت 26 زياتن وي زنز الصعبه هاغرات زحايله كارنسي وي ون باطيرا زلون هاغرات تباهيلن كم زترقحا ابناي افريقا املكيتلو از دما ني ኤርትራ اب مبل شاد شيتي زترتا كم تسرع غيروالو زحايله كارنسي ناي افريقا توب 10 تباهيلن زوعا هاغرات افريقايان زياتن
Dinar 3.09 per US dollar. Tunisia continues to have the strongest currency in Africa. The Tunisian dinar's value is supported by a stable economic policy, controlled inflation, and robust trade relations with Europe. 2. Libyan dinar 4.83 per US dollar. Despite past political challenges, Libya's oil wealth has helped maintain the strength of the Libyan dinar. The country's vast natural resources provide strong backing for its currency. 3. Moroccan dirham 9.57 per US dollar. Morocco's strategic trade policies, tourism, and industrial development contribute to the strength of the Moroccan dirham. The country maintains a balanced economy that ensures its currency remains one of the strongest in Africa. 4. Botswana pula 13.62 per US dollar. Botswana's strong currency is a reflection of its stable democracy and well-managed economy. The government's prudent fiscal policies and wealth from diamonds keep the Botswanan pula valuable. 5. Seychelles rupee 14.37 per US dollar. Seychelles' economy relies heavily on tourism, fisheries, and offshore financial services. The country's well-regulated banking sector ensures that the Seychelles rupee maintains a high value against the US dollar. 6. Eritrean nakfa 15.00 per US dollar. The Eritrean nakfa remains relatively strong due to the government's tight control over foreign exchange and economic activities. Despite economic challenges, the currency holds firm compared to others in the region.
جرما نايهبي منغان نتختلت زمناو عندنتن دويلو زمكت زلو إرتراو دياسبورا نغبرو مورال حج انتاي كبلونا أمسلكم ازي اديتي وكم اليوم هذا نعخاتكم دمان تاي كبلوهم يمسلكم هجدا في قدي دوام كبلوهم يم كلتا لازي اديت كم دا يكونن كم دا يتقددنان بعد دمتي تامع أنت خبدم تقرد عودنا حفاش كند متساينا جرمانا يابونا أزماتش بره قبر كيدان شحن شعات 140 شوعات زبلوا حنتقال ملغ تغل سددينا علم سلنات النتزبن نتعارة كلا بعلو أرعوت زدلي ورا غروب كسادو سقيلو بغرابعات حنوق نزبل فطور موداتو كتسقباي أبونا حربنيا أزماتش بره قبر كيدان مكتل بريزيدنت إرتراويان أوراجا سراي شحن شعات 140 شوعة.
And you, Mr. Mike Hammer, the so-called unity that you are plotting has been tried by your fathers and was foiled by my grandfathers. My grandfathers told your fathers that Eritrea is for Eritreans. Maybe that time my grandfathers were 20 in number. Now, over 20,000 voices of Eritrean youth are telling you once again that Eritrea is for Eritreans and will remain for Eritreans forever.
فتصام تاريخ تنكيخ وزبل ودلو مرو ود زيد الجن على خبرنا فتصام تاريخ
زينا ناي دبلوماسي ألنا بمسارة حدش سوات زينا ناي دبلوماسي مرحتي السودان جبتن أبا ممعبال كلتا أو زمدن أن ناي زوباون أهجراون قدايات زتيوم منستر واتساي قدايات السودان دكتور علي يوسف مس منستر قدايات واتساي دكتور بدر أحمد سفيح ركب أب جبسي أكايدوم كلتين هجرات بقدم تقتل أب أسمران كايرون بب أوان وزكايدو ناي ممغغارن مدرخات زتقالله كلتاوي قداياتن حبراوي أقداسنت زلوهم زباوي قداياتن بفلاي واناوي معبالتن نايم سودانن كم أون تان كيه بحري عمل كيتهم عميق زتكايدوم منستر قدايات وزاي جبسي بدر عبد اللاتي لومي سنبت أب زهابو مجلسي مس سوداناوي مزنو علي يوسف بتساتفو كوبانياتات جبسي داغمه هنصاتات سودان زسرح حبراوي ناي سراح جوجل نمقام كم زت سمامعو اتي مغلطي يملكت كريديت ناي نقفا بريس
تاكي غازبل لبز قولو الله خبالي الله خوعرو فتصام تاريخ تاكي غزبل قدلو برو تاريخ تدكم الله خبالي
كال منغستي شودن أب نعبي ستاتوفو إرتراويان تبايلوم زوع زلو نزوم أدقي نحمدو وجلتات كم زقيدة تحابير له منغستي شودن أب نعبي نستاتوفو شدشت إرتراويان فردي هيبولو منغستي شودن أب فيستيفال إرتراويان أجرجر بمفتار زتترطرو فردي هيبو أتوم شدشت أب تحت قيد زعاتو سبات أب نايكل تشحن إسران سلستن أب ستوكولم أب زتخايد فيستيفال إرتراويان أجرجر بمفتار نما أسرتي كم زتفردو مع كانت زينا ناي شودن حبيرن اللو أبت فيستيفال استخير الأجرجر لعلي 5 سبات كوجدون كله أستات 240 سبات أب كأيدي كم زعاتو أب جزيو أب ساعتون زت جلسة مغانو يحبر توساقي أب جرمن ون أزيك أيدي ناي أدقنا حمدو كم زتخيرن يحبريو أب تسرعيت لعلي كلتا مئتي أولاد بوليس يساتفو مهلاوم زتتقصى أتي مجلتي زرمانة دحرتي أب كلتشعر إسران كلتن أب جرمن أب عالجيسنن أب كالوت كتماتاتن نايش شتوتغارتن زقات أما أجرجرن نعبن سعيبويو أبت أوانو قال أبالات نايتي أدقنا حمدو دقفتي بزحات تأثيرهم من باروم أب ساعتون أب جزيون وتيو زنبرة حبريتايو نزي سعيبو زوت زلو حبريتاتات انتاي كم زغنا كنريينا سلازي أب جرمن أب زي زحلفة معلتات كم زي كلنا تغتاتلنايو بمسرة أب علت إسران 4 ورح سلسة كلتا شحن إسران 4 أب جرمن أب ناي إرتراويان فيستيفالن أب ناي كلتا شحن إسران كلتن إسران سلستن أب عالجيسن كالوتن زقبرو نعبيوتو تسعيبو حموشتا إيروباوين هاجرات قبرش براوين مغانوم أب مزقب كم زسفر يفلت أتي بعلت إسران حموشتن ناب إسران شدشنا بزوجة هذا حدره حيال قفا كساب بعل دنمارك أبيلو كم زتزرجحون تحابريتها يملكت قال أولاتنا إذا من قصاص زخونو كم بعل أوت كارا هديمهم عاد إنجليز كم زاتو تحابير له أبز على فور حتى رأي أب جرمن حموشت أولات عاد نحمدو أبتعتق أيدي كم زاتو تحابريتها تبتي ويا الملكت أتيت مالي سولس على إسران حموشان جمر حيال قفا بوليس جرمن ملؤ ليتي أب ملأت هاجر معدارون أنا تيرو يركب زي زرقنا نصر ملأخذ تليو فتحي دالين دابل كان قال فتحي سلام كتزرق مستفتن كل وزغ السعبين قليل كخون كم زي كليو دغنا بعد 20 شوعتن تمالي زوصه منستر نا بريزيدنت ناي بادن غوتنبرغ بمسرت ذهبوا حبريتا شتوتغارت 290 أدقنا حمدو تخصيصهم 34 بجنزب تغذيهم 56 دما كم زتا أسرو ات منستر بريزيدنت ناي بادن غوتنبرغ حبيرو نيرو
Im Visier. Deutschlandweite Antiterror-Razzia. Karlsruhe. Razzia in mehreren Bundesländern am Mittwoch. Im Visier sind die Köpfe einer Terrorgruppe. Die Bundesanwaltschaft mit Sitz in Karlsruhe lässt seit heute Morgen insgesamt 19 Objekte durchsuchen. 8 davon in Hessen, 4 in Nordrhein-Westfalen, 3 in Bayern, 2 in Baden-Württemberg und je 1 in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern und Rheinland-Pfalz. Ziel der Razzia ist die Festnahme von 17 Beschuldigten, die Gründer oder Mitglieder einer inländischen terroristischen Vereinigung sein sollen. Es geht um die sogenannte Brigade Nሓመዱ, eine international vernetzte Gruppe, die die Regierung in Eritrea stürzen will. Gewalt gegen Polizei. Der Ableger in Deutschland ist seit mindestens 3 Jahren aktiv, soll mehrfach Gewalt auf eritreischen Veranstaltungen verübt haben. Laut Bundesanwaltschaft würden auch Angriffe gegen die deutsche Polizei als legitimes Mittel betrachtet. Es besteht der Verdacht, dass die Brigade Nሓመዱ für die Gewalteskalation unter anderem bei den Eritrea-Festivals 2022 und 2023 in Gießen sowie 2023 in Stuttgart mit zahlreichen verletzten Beamten verantwortlich war. Mindestens ein vor Ort in Stuttgart festgenommener Randalierer ist bereits verurteilt worden. Ein weiterer mutmaßlicher Führer der Brigade wurde erst kürzlich in den Niederlanden wegen seiner Beteiligung an Ausschreitungen Anfang 2024 in Den Haag zu mehreren Jahren Knast verurteilt. Bei den Einsätzen am Mittwoch in Deutschland sind über 200 Beamte des Bundeskriminalamts und Polizeikräfte der Länder im Einsatz. Eine weitere Durchsuchung findet zeitgleich in Dänemark statt. Festnahmen soll es
زي زرأيكم زلو فلوت صحافي غازطنيان جيف بيرس زبهل بزح مصحفتي كابزو صحافن زبركتن مخانو فلوت يو نزوم ناي برغيد نحمدو ويون زوم ادغ نحمدو املكيتو حدا نوح دبله صحف تمالي على 27 ززرغو نيرو ابت صحفو عبودات مخانوم اكايدኦም أزي نجارزي كقاتم مخانو أم تشرشتو نبي كوزدم كم زغل جميته كم زنا نيرة يبل أبتيناتو زهبو تصب بتوساقي لك كم تي حوحات زجبرو زنبرة أبتي كويناتها مونغو إيرتران إثيوبيا نابزنا برلو لك كومو عينة زمثل ستايل أبزي نايزوم برجيد نحمدون يرأى كم زلون وسيخو يحبر الزيد ما إيد نايزوم دك حوحات ترف مرفناتهم كم زلو ومن أب استفر عليه قاعدة أتات زوج دلور ما نعاتهم نتيجة قبرو وذلو عمت النعبن justifies قبرو ويون مغنيات زقرب أكندي أشبرتي يوم إلو ملو بملو زد صحف بعلامة نتبي إرترا زلو منقستي كمزن سلا زقات زلو كندز عمت سلا أبسلت أن سلا زنحة نعو يوم زق أو مزلو زبل ناي مغنياتات ندقربكا نتقول داي كنهار كمز قبر زلو مارتين بلاوت حلوف حليفو أب نا إمباسيتات كيدكم أقاصلو يلو كم زتزاربن أزدمان وزحات مدفافي كم زخونن أبزي بحفشا كابزي أقريب وزلو يو در زلو أمجرشتو سلام وفتحي كتم تسئلكا أب وعز دخولنا يوروب أو هاجر وي معربا وهاجر كوفيلكا قول عسبيتي كتهرم فتم قبول كم زي كونن نا عبودات سرار حي سرح كم زلون بجهدي أبزي قاليت والله تصحفوا انتهي كم زبل بحساب كوينا كن
Brigade Nሓመዱ, its predatory violence against Eritreans and its Western media accomplices. By Jeff Pierce. To Brigade Nሓመዱ, I hate what you stand for, which is an outright perversion of the idea of standing up to power.
Brigade Nሓመዱ, I hate what he's standing for. ማለት بتعمي يحرقني وتي عينت حيسكم مزلهم متكل ناكايدان ناي بحقي زقطع نغريو نابنت دغفتي منغستي إرترا سلو زخونو فيستيفال زغبرو زلو إلكم انت دابتي وحز زغونه هاجر كوم غيركم نعبت فترو خنكم comparison ወይ መነጻጸሪ ንፋኖ አምጪው እቶም ደገፍት መንግስቲ ናብ ዘለዎ እቶም ንፋኖ ዝድግፉ ወድማ ከይዶም ከናዕቡ ወይ ክቀትሉ ከምኡ ክገብሩ ዲዮም ከምኡ ዓይነት ከይ ግቡእ ዲዩ ናይ በሓቂ ናይ ዕብዳን ጥራዩ እዚ ዝኸድዎ ዘለው ይዝብል ዘሎ
Because you don't stand up to power. You slunk away from that power, put down roots in a nice, cozy place in Europe or North America, and then you attack people at festivals where they naturally don't expect they'll have to defend themselves.
ኣብ ምዕራባውያን ዓለም ኮንኩም ኣብቲ ውሕዝ ዝኾነ ምዕራባውያን ዓለም ኮንኩም ነቶም ፌስቲቫል ዝገብሩ ዘለው ወልሓንቲ ንኽበኣሱ ዘይከዱ ዘለው መከላኸሊ እውን ዘይብሎም ንዓኣቶም ሃንደበት ሓደጋ ትወድቅዎም እዚ ድማ ናይ ጅግንነት ምልክት ኣይኮነን
I hate your phony crusade, and I refuse to fear what is by its nature despicable and cowardly. Neither should anyone else. The time is long overdue to talk about the insanity plaguing the Eritrean diaspora. And the cynically slanted, positive coverage a terrorism group gets on Western news sites. That group is called
ካልእ እቲ ምዕራባውያን ሜድያታት ድሸፋፍናሎም ንዓኣቶም ስቕ ንብለሉ ግዜ ሎሚ ሓሊፊኡ ክንዛረቢና ብዛዕባ እውን بعلامة نتي ناريشن وينتي ترخا نتي زجبر زلو يتأمازز الله كلنا نرينا لنا بعد BBC أيتبل Associated Press كالوتن ويل زي أتوم ولاون تعنو ولاون حماق تجبرو نتي إرترا زلو منجستي يوم زك أومو زلو ندابلكا نا كندي عشبرتي مبال justify كتجبر ومغنيات بمهاب نزو قداي كنها هرو يوم تدغاغامي زتعذبنايو سلازي اذا ناي ويسترن نيوز دما بعلامه اكند اشبرتي لهم صوعهم نزي نغرات كشفافنا لهم رينايوم نزي ملس دهب زلو
Brigade Namedu, and from any objective viewpoint it's made up of psychopaths. I don't
اتيناي بريجيد نحمدو بكل وغناتو تريخايو بسايكوباتس عبودات سبات زتملأ مخانو رغصنيا يزبل زلو
don't make that statement lightly. But what else would you call the members of a movement that deliberately attacks people at public festivals and has provoked violent incidents in Sweden, Germany, Canada, and Israel? More on those in a bit.
ካልእ ሽም ክህቦም ኣይክእልን እየ ካልእ ክረኽበሎም ኣይክእልን እየ ከምዛ ዓይነት ሰላማውያን ሰባት ኣብ ዝተፈላለዩ ሃገራት ኣብ ጀርመን ኣብ ስዊድን ኣብ ካናዳ ኣብ እስራኤል ከይዶም ዕንወትን ከቢድ ሽግርን ዝፈጥሩ እንታይ ዓይነት ሽም ክህበሎም ይኽእል ካልእ ሽም ክረኽበሎም ኣይክእልን እየ ዕቡዳት ጥራይ ክብሎም ዝኽእል ይዝብል ዘሎ
That treats violence as its modus operandi and celebrates it. Worse, the Western media operations that treated the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) like heroes during its war with Ethiopian federal forces now consider Brigade Namedu the new plucky underdogs, even if they don't always identify them by name, usually just calling them protesters.
ካልእ እተን ናይ ምዕራባውያን ሜድያታት ኣብ እቲ 2020 ዝጀመረ ኩናት ኣብ መንጎ ፌደራል መንግስትን ናይ ኢትዮጵያን ኣብ መንጎ ሕወሓትን ዝነበረ ነቶም ቀተልቲ ነቶም ዓመፅቲ ናይ ሕወሓት ሰራዊትን መሪሕነትን ከም ጀጋኑ ዝገልጾም ዝነበራ ኣብዚ ግዜ ዝውን ልክዕ ከምኡ ዓይነት መስርሕ ተኸቲለን ነዚ ናይ ብርጌድ ንሓመዱ እንዳሸፋፈና ይኸዳ ከም ዘለዋን እዚ ድማ ዘርአየ ንጹር ይብል ኣብ ዝባዕሉ እውን እዘን ሜድያታትን እቶም ሰባት ኣብዚ ናይ ብርጌድ ንሓመዱ ዘለውን ናይ ሕወሓት ተረፍ መረፍ ምዃኑ ዘርአየ ጉዳይ እዩ ይብል
There are two reasons for this shameless support. For the unfamiliar, it's an open secret that many of Brigade Namedu's ranks are made up of staunch TPLF zealots who fled Ethiopia and falsified their asylum claims by pretending to be Eritreans.
ነቶም ሓደሽቲ ዝኾንኩም ነዚ ጉዳይ ዘይፈለጥኩሞ እዚ ናይ ብርጌድ ንሓመዱ ዝበሃል ግሩፕ ዝበዝሑ ካብቶም ናይ ሕወሓት ዝነበሩ ጉጅለታት ኣብቲ ዕግርግር ኣብ 2020 ዝነበረን ቅድሚኡ እውን ካብኡ ሃዲሞም ናብ ኤውሮጳ ዝኣተው ናብ ምዕራባዊ ዓለም ዝኣተው ኤርትራውያን ኢዶም ዝሃቡ እዮም ዘኺድዎ ዘለው
It's only recently that Western authorities have figured out the con job. In part, because TPLFites can't help bragging on social media platforms, and some dumbass gave the game away.
ኣብዚ ቀረባ ግዜ ጥራዮም ብዛዕባ እዚ ጉዳይ እዚ ኣፍልጦ ክረኽባ ዝኽኣላ ምዕራባውያን ኤክስፖዝ ክገብርኦ ዝኽኣላ እዚ ድማ ሓደ ዓሻ ዝኾነ ሰብ which is ነዚ ናይ ዴይሊ ሜይል ሪፈር ዝገብሮ ዘሎ ናብ ማሕበራዊ ሚድያ ወፂኡ ነቲ ዝግበር ዝነበረ ጌም ነቲ ዝካየድ ዝነበረ ብሽም ኤርትራውያን ተመሲልካ ዝወሃብ ዝነበረ ሸቐጥ ብሽም ኤርትራውያን ባዕሉ ስለ ዘቃልዖ ምዕራባውያን ክሪእኦ ክኢለን እየን እንተኾነ ኣክንዲ ተጋሩ ኢሉ ዝጽውዕ ኣብቲ ሚድያ እውን ይብል ነቲ ናይ ዴይሊ ሜይል ዝወቅስ ዘሎ ኢትዮጵያውያን ኢሉ ሸፊንዎ ክኸይድ መሪጹ ይዝብል ዘሎ
The Daily Mail was either too ignorant or too lazy to do the proper research to confirm that most of the fake refugees were of Tigrayan background, simply calling them Ethiopians. The other reason is that the Brigade Namedu narrative is being peddled by a few of the same unethical reporters who first lied about the TPLF. Here is how an Associated Press story flipped the script in 2023 and practically made a story about thugs at cultural festivals into the Boston Tea Party, flaming cars, violent clashes, dozens of people detained.
ኣብ 2023 Associated Press ዝተባህለ ጋዜጣ ነቲ ናዕቢ ኣብ ቦስተን ካልኦትን ከተማታት ናይ ኣሜሪካን ካል ዝተገብረ መኪናታት ዘቃጽልሉ ኣብ ፌስቲቫልን ካልእን ነቲ ታሪክ ገምጢሉ ብኻልእ ከርኤና ከም ዝፈተነ ይብል ይቀጽል
As one of the world's most repressive countries marks 30 years of independence, festivals held by Eritrea's diaspora in Europe and North America have been attacked by exiles the Eritrean government dismisses as asylum scum.
ናይ መበል 30 ናይ ኤርትራ ዓመት ናይ ናጽነት ኣብ ዝቀርበሉ ዘሎ ሓደ ካብቶም ንመንግስቲ ኤርትራ እዩ ኣብዚ እቲ Associated Press ንመንግስቲ ኤርትራ እዩ ምልክት እዩ ዘውጽኦ እዩ 30 ዓመት ቀሪቡ ኣብ ዘሎ ንመንግስቲ ኤርትራ ብነጋቲቭ ዓይነት እንዳተጻረፈ እዩ ኣውጽኡ ዘሎ ስለዚ ንዕኡ ስዒቡ እቶም ጸረ መንግስቲ ኤርትራ ዝኾኑ ኣብ ፌስቲቫላት ናዕቢ ክገብሩ ተራእዮም ኢሉ ከም ኤክስኪውዝ እዩ ክገብረሎም ፈቲኑ ወይ ጃስቲፊኬሽን ይክህቦም ዝፍትን ዘሎ እቲ ዝገብርዎ ዘለው ቁኑዕ እዩ እንዳበለ እዩ ዳርጋ እቲ ከምዚ ዓይነት ሪዮቶሪክ ወይ ኣጸሓሕፋ መሊሱ ነቲ ጉዳይ ከነሃህሮ እምበር ኣብ ፍትሒ ኣብ ሕጊ ክወፁ ክቐርቡን ኣይገበርን ጸኒሑ ሕጂቲ ስቶሪ ይግምጠል ኣሎ ድሓን ንቐጽል
The story is by Kara Anna. And right now, the Ethiopians reading this will be rolling their eyes and muttering, of course. Because it's easy to recognize Kara Anna, she's the one with her pants constantly on fire over the falsehoods and distortions she's written.
እቲ ናይ Associated Press ኣብ 2023 ተጻሕፈ ጽሑፍ በዛ ካራ ኣና ተባህለት ሓንቲ ጋዜጠኛ ናይ Associated Press ይወጽዩ ካራ ኣና ኣብ ናይ ኣክሱም ተገይሩ ዝተባህለ ናይ ጭፍጨፋ ኣነ ሪኤ ዝበሉ ሰባትን ንሳውን ከም ዝነበረት ጌራ ዝጻሓፈቶ ዝወጸ ነይሩ ዘይነበሮ ኩሉ ሓሶት ዝጻሓፈት ሰብያ ብኸመይ ትፍለጥ ንዓኣ ኮንፍሮንት ተገብርዋ ወይ እውን ኣቤሎት ኤቪደንስ ኢሎም ዝሓተትዋ ብዙሓት መልሲ ክትቦም ኣይከኣለትን ስለዚ ብዙሓት ኢትዮጵያውያን ንዛ ሰብ እዚ ኣፈልጥዋ እዮም ስለዚ መን ዳኸ የውጽኦ ዝሓሶት ኦፍ ኮርስ ካራኣና ያ ነዚ ናይዞም ኣድግ ንሓመዱ ድማ ኣብ 2023 ነቲ ዝገበርዎ ናዕቢ ኣክንዲ ኣሸበርቲ ኢላ ትጽሕፍ ብግምጣሉ ንመንግስቲ ኤርትራ ክትወቅስ ያ ጽሕፈት ኣውጽያ ነይራ ታንኪዩ ንቐጽል
But now Brigade Namedu has gone too far and tipped its hand. An app story written by Kirsten Grieshaber notes that police in 6 German states conducted raids and scooped up 17 suspects. In Germany, they're not screwing around. They consider Brigade Namedu a terrorist group, which it is, as it coordinated violent riots at Eritrea festivals in Gießen on August.
ሕጅግን ግዚኡ ኣኺሉ ኣብ ጀርመን ልዕሊ 17 ዝኾኑ መንግስቲ ጀርመን ኣሸበርቲ ብምባል ገዛ እንዳኸደ ኣብ ብዙሓት ከተማታት ናይ ጀርመን ሃድን ከም ዝጀመረ ምክንያቱ እታ ጉዳይ ናብ ኢዶም ስለ ዝመጽእ ዘላ ነቶም ምዕራባውያን በዓል ጀርመን ሆላንድን ካልኦትን ማለት እዩ ነዚ ንነዊሕ ግዜያት ሸለል ስለ ዝበልዎ ናብ ርእሶም ይግምጠል ከም ዘሎ ኢና ንርኢ ዘለና እዚ Associated Press ሓደ ካብቶም ጋዜጠኛታት ጽሒፍዎ ዝነበረ ንዕኡን ይምልሰሉ ኣሎ እንተኾነ ግን ኣብ ፓራግራፍ 7 ናይቲ ጽሑፍ ናይቲ Associated Press ነቲ ታሪክ ኣብዚኣውን ትዊስት አላታ ገምጢልዋ እንታይ ኢሉ ነቲ ኣብ ጀርመን ዝተገብረ ጭፍጨፋን ዓመጽን legitimate ዩ ክብሎ ፈቲኑ ወይ እውን ቁንዕዩ ይግብኦም እዩ ክገብሩ ይኽእሉ እዮም ወላ አንጻር ፖሊሲ ይኹን አንጻር ሲቪላውያን ሰባት እንተጨፍጨፉን ደሓኒው ዝዓይነቱ ናይ ምጥምዛዝ ትረኻ እዩ ንዕኡን ይምልሰሉ ኣሎ brilliant thank you Jeff
2022 and on August 7 to 8 2023 as well as the seminar of an Eritrean association in Stuttgart on Sept 16 2023 numerous police officers were injured at the events, some of them seriously, and dozens of protesters were detained. Now here's what's truly fascinating. Greece Harbour buries the lead. It takes until paragraph 7 for her to get to what is likely the real reason the German authorities swooped down on homes in Hesse, Bavaria and other locales. Paragraph 7. That's where you read this. Prosecutors also say that some members of the association considered violence against German state institutions and police offices to be legitimate.
لك أبزياتا غريس هابرت بهالنا Associated Press حيفاتا زنبرت قلا منبرات ويون قلا أبالات نايزي Association أنصار ناي جرمن زخون التكالاتن بوليسن متقعتي مقبار كم قبوليو إلهم كم زأمنون prosecutors مالت كابتوم دايانون كيترفو يوم نزي كونع إلهم يأمنو إلهم صحيفهم زلو جن أيناي دانيا يكون إلو صحيفو دلو زبل حتون دهر عليك أتركبني هاهم دبال فرتي هون دايانو زي نعبز تجبره كونعيو زبلة يلن أزي حجي ستيل نايتي تاريخن متأمزاز زرقي زلو أزي مليسو نزي نعبي كنها هارد أيمبر كهد أي جبرون.
Years ago, I predicted that some TPLF exiles would morph into an organized crime syndicate or into a terrorism organization. It seems I was at least partially correct, but
قد قال عمتات قال ترف مرفناي حوحات دحري مبتتانهم ناي نعبن كم زعينة زمثل شجراتن كفترو كم زخلو جميتان يره بخافيلو تزجمتكوا حق إن دخونا يمتسأله.
But I take no pleasure in that. I've studied gangs, wrote a whole book about them, which even got used as a criminology textbook, and I studied terrorism and insurgencies to get my MA. I was already studying some of that anyway for my book, Prevail. And I can assure you this will get uglier. If the lunatics in Germany think German targets are legit, that means Brigade Nሓመዱ cells anywhere could attack government institutions and ordinary civilian targets, as well as commit assassinations.
ስለዚህ እምበኣር ነዚ ኣብ ጀርመን ዝተገብረ ቁንዕዩ ቅቡልዩ ነቲ መጥቃዕቲ ዝገበርዎ ብርጌድ ንሓመዱ ቁንዕዩ ቅቡልዩ እንተደኣ ትብል ኮንካ ነዚ ጃስቲፋይ ስለትገብሮ ዘለኻ ኣብ ካልእ ሃገራት እውን ናይ መንግስቲ ትካላትን ፖሊስን መንግስታዊ ኣካላትን ሲቪል ዝኾኑ ሰባትን ንኸጥቅዑ ንኽቐትሉን መገዲ ትፈጥረሎም ኣለኻ ማለት እዩ ወይ እውን ግሪን ካርድ ትህቦም ኣለኻ
It's insane because terrorism in most contexts is self-defeating. And let me be clear. My own beliefs are closer to those of Frantz Fanon, who was repulsed by violence but saw the necessity of it in a revolutionary struggle. The Amhara militia groups known collectively as Fano in Ethiopia are fighting federal forces today because their people are getting ethnically cleansed. You can't negotiate with a dictator committing genocide any more than Netanyahu will bargain in good faith with Palestinians, he just goes on bombing the shit out of them. And Sir Abiy Ahmed keeps up the drone strikes against civilians.
أبزي بحفشة بزعبا فانو يزارب زلو فانو أبي أحمد نتناتو هزبي ناي أمحرا يقتلون يشوفون سلو زلو أنصارو يقالو سلو أبي أحمد دما بنفرتي بدرون جيرو يشوفون مالو سلازي نتانياهو فلسطين زغبرو زلون ينصاصرولو انتونه فانو كقالوسو نحاغروم يمزقالوسو دلو نت حزبهم سلازي فانو زدغفو ابدغون سلازلو لمنغستي اثيوبيا زدغفو ابدغ سلازلو سلازي توم نفانو زدغفو نتوم ناي منغستي اثيوبيا زدغفو ريستورانت زلوم فيستيفالات كوبغلو كيدوم كتقعوم نعب خفطرلوم سي يخؤلو دو ريخا حجتي كومباريزن زغبرو زلو نابزي يزوسدنا زلو ببقروب معناتي ايكولون يم كحسبو ون ايدولينيوم ازي يأمرو دلو سب كغبرو زي كل اتحساسبا ግን من يبدحريوم دلو ابزي اتانت بخمص اخ جمري بعلو
And while Ethiopians in the diaspora will retweet memes and hashtags supporting Fano, no one is so reckless or irresponsible as to suggest attacking pro-government Ethiopians in their communities in America or Europe.
ማለት ደገፍቲ ፋኖ ኣብ ኤክስ ይኹኑ ንፋኖ ከም ዝድግፉ ክጽሕፉ ይኽእሉ ወይ ዝኾነ ክዛረቡ ይኽእሉ እዮም ግን ዝኾነ ይኹን ናይ ኮሚኒቲ ወይ ዝኾነ ማሕበራት ናይ መንግስቲ ኢትዮጵያ ከይዶም ከጥቅዑ አይደልን እዮም
The very idea would mortify any sincere backer of Fano. Just as the students supporting Palestinians were not violent at Columbia, as much as Fox News tried to depict them otherwise. Resistance tactics are yes, technically terrorism. The French resistance got started a year after the Nazis made hospitality of that nation with violence. It'll be stupidly tragic and self-defeating. Nobody flocks to white supremacy after a creep plows his car through demonstrators and kills people. Nobody flocked to the cause of Basque or Palestinian terrorists in the 1960s and 70s because their destruction naturally horrified the European public minding its own business. You have to be completely deranged to reach the point where you commit violence for the sole purpose of raising awareness, that is, to get attention.
ስለዚህ መታና ቃልቦ ክትረክብ ኢልካ ናዕብን እግርግርን መቕታልን ምጭፍጫፍን ክትገብር ኣይትኽእልን ኢኻ
But yes, today's modern psychopath can point to precedent. Americans hate their healthcare and insurance infrastructure, and with good reason. Out of these vague resentments, it somehow became socially acceptable in some circles to cheer on Luigi Mangione, who allegedly strolled outside a Hilton hotel in Midtown Manhattan in December and shot to death an insurance executive, Brian Thompson. A zealot considers the ends justify the means. Hey, the zealot replies to natural condemnation, it doesn't matter if I attack or kill these folks, you are talking about me. In passing, I'll just put Brigade Namedu on notice that yes, I'm fully aware that you might try to kill me. I'm 62 years old. I can't run fast or far anymore. I now have to get up in the middle of the night to use the washroom, but the way I see it, your egos are more fragile than my bladder. Just the same, I won't put up any false macho bravado of, hey, come get me. I'll just say that if you do, that could be a great career move for me because a martyred writer often gets a boost in readership. I hate you. I hate what you stand for, which is an outright perversion of the idea of standing up to power. Because you don't stand up to power. You slunk away from that power, put down roots in a nice, cozy place in Europe or North America and then attack people at festivals where they naturally don't expect they'll have to defend themselves.
ስለዚህ ኣዝየ ዝጸልኣኩም በዚ ትገብርዎ ዘለኹም ኣካይዳኹምን ናዕብን በርጌስ ሰባት ብምጭፍጫፍን ናይ ብሓቂ ራእይ ዘይብሉ ወይ መትከል ዘይብሉ ሰቂልካ ብዘይ ዕላማ ከምዚ ጌርካ ንሰባት ምህራምን ኣብ ውሑዝ ሃገር ኮንካ ኣብ ዩሮፕን ኖርዝ ኣሜሪካን ኮፍ ኢልካ ኣብ ፌስቲቫል ካልእን ዝገብሩ ሲቪላን ሰባት መጥቃዕቲ ወይ ውን ባእሲ ከይተዳለው ኣብ ዝኸድሉ መጥቃዕቲ ክትገብረሎም እዚ ናይ ብሓቂ ካብቲ ቀንዲ ክጸልኣኩም ንዓኹም ዝገበረኒ እዩ ይብል
I hate your phony crusade, and I refuse to fear what is by its nature despicable and cowardly. Neither should anyone else. So, let's examine your violence, your cowardice, and how you intend to keep this madness going. The background. There's not enough space or time here to dig deep into the sordid, sad history of Eritrea. And no matter what I write here, it'll piss someone off. Too bad. It is a historical fact that Menelik abandoned the residents of Eritrea after the Battle of Adwa. Now, if you're a Menelik fan as so many folks are, you can justify it a number of ways. The country was still trying to cope with widespread famine and cattle disease, and his army was exhausted and wanted to go home. The ugly truth was that if Menelik had managed to retake all this land, this might have invited stronger colonial players down the road to try to steal it again. Ethiopia was not a sea power and never really had been. His decision not to
ኣብዚኣ ናብ መነሊክ ካብ ዝነበረሉ ግዜ እዩ ዝኸይድ መነሊክ ናይ ኤርትራ ታሪኽ እዩ ድሕሪት ዝምለስ መነሊክ ንኤርትራ ዲፈንድ ክገብረላ ኣይከኣለን ወይ ክከላኸል ኣይከኣለን ነቲ ህዝቢ ኣብኡ ዝነበረ ገዲፍዎ ወረርቲ ከም በዓል ጣልያን ምስ መፁ እውን ገዲፍዎ ናቱ ምክንያት የምፅእ ድኻም ነይርዎም እንስሳታት ናቱ ከብትታት ሓሚመን ነይረን እዚታት ንድሕሪት ንቅድሚትን ነብል ይብል ኣብ መጨረሽቱ ግን ዛዕበየ ፖይንት ኣብዚ ከነስተውዕለሉ ዘለና እንታይ ይብል Ethiopia was not a sea power and never really had been. ስለዚህ ኢትዮጵያ ባሕሪ ነይርዋ ይፈልጥን እዩ ፈጺማ ባሕሪ ዝበሃሪ ኣተውን ኣይትፈልጥን እያ እዚ ሓደ ካብቶም ብኢትዮጵያውያን ዝፍቶ prominent figure ተባሂሉ ወይ እውን ፍሉጣት ሰባት ተባሂሉ ብዛዕባ ኢትዮጵያ ብዙሕ መጽሓፍ ዝጸሓፈ ሰብዩ ፕሪቫይል ካልእን ዝብል መጽሓፍ ዝጸሓፈ እዩ ስለዚህ ኢትዮጵያ ባሕሪ ዝበሃሪ ኣቶ ኣይትፈልጥን እያ ናይ ባሕሪ ነገር ኣይነበራን በዚ ሓሶት እዚ አቢ አሕመድ አተሲእዎ ዘለውን እቲ ህዝቢ ኣብ ነንሕሑ ንኸይጫፋጨፉን ኣብዚ ማዕዳታት ክህብ ክንሪኦ ኢና ብገሊኡ
To chase the Italians out of Eritrea was certainly not popular with everyone. Razzia wanted to drive the Italians into the sea. He didn't get his chance. But spare a thought for all those folks on the other side of the line who expected Menelik to liberate them. They were to be bitterly disappointed. No one will like it either that Haile Selassie does not come off looking good when after the Second World War, he actively campaigned to absorb Eritrea into his realm.
بدحريو يا ألولا يتأكس ألولاون فتينو فتيمو أيقونالون قديفوه أو غلو دحرنا بهايل سلاسة دحري كال أيقونات عالم ني إرترا كملسا أبزور بكجبرا ون يفتن كم زنبرة انتقنا أبز زيرو زر يعني أنت أيو إثيوبيا بحري زبحري أطوي زيت فالحجريا بحر زبحلون أين بران كحجي أبز جزية زعاسة ببحري كال إنكم غلو نقر ما قدرنا رأيو نقر انت أيو أزي بحري زبل زلو بعلامة أبي أحمد زقبرو زلو نازي بحري كبلو زقنايه وين سالسي عامتو قريبو زلو دما أبزي زحلفة معالتات كلنا دستعزمنا يوم حدا نقر انت أنيرو بشنكتهم ناي EBS زبهالو زرقحوو حدا نايتان كلتا دك أنستيو نزيئاتن زملكت زرقحوو منقستي أبي قطعو مقلت إسيينو اللي إزلو مغنياتو أتي attention بملؤو نابزي دايفرت خوينو تتقوي سلازلو أتي زحاسبو كونلو كم زي كعلينا زلنا سلازي زيرو بحري أين بران إثيوبيا بحر ندابل كان هزبينا بحو مئتاو دوكبل اللو
I have written about all this in my book, Prevail, and my late friend, Ambassador Imru Zeleke, was there and wrote in his memoir, A Journey, about how the new constitution to please the UN, which was supposed to prove Ethiopia was worthy of taking it over, was a complete sham. Ethiopia set about dismantling all the budding signs of a homegrown democracy and a free press, sparking what would be one of the ugliest and longest insurgencies in African history. When the TPLF emerged as the front-runner of the coalition that fought the Marxist Derg, one of its key allies was, surprise, one Nizariya Afewerki. Eritrea went its own way after a referendum in 1993, but a border dispute in May of 1998 erupted between Tigrayan militia and Eritrean soldiers at a spot called Badme. Though only lasting a couple of years, the war was incredibly bitter and bloody, with thousands getting killed. In 2002, an international boundary commission declared that Badme belonged to Eritrea. Ethiopia under Meles chose to ignore this ruling and held onto the village.
ስለዚህ ድሕርቲ ናይ 30 ዓመት ዝወሰደ ቃልሲ ኣብ መንጎ ኤርትራን ኢትዮጵያን ዝነበረ ደማዊ ኩናት ኣብ 93 ኦፊሻሊ ኤርትራ ሃገር ኮይና بدحريو أب 98 حيال كينات أمام كلتن زن هجرات سعيبو بعد ما تام صحابي تار استي إلى ما زنبور إثيوبيا ني إرترا تفريدا أنت هنا بإثيوبيا بملس تمرح زنبرت إثيوبيا نتي ناكلت شحن كلتن international boundary commission ويون علم لخاوي وساني ناي دوبات نعو إغنور بمقبار ويون كم زي ملكوتو سلازبلن نوح عامتات أب تعدي كوف كم زبلن. Thank you.
The key concession that Abiy Ahmed made in trying to normalize relations with Eritrea in 2018 was to at last give up Badme. The history of the past 30 years is so politicized that you'll find it difficult to track down even one history of Eritrea that isn't tainted by the creepy influence of Tufts University's favorite TPLF propagandist Alex Derval and or his circle. He is virtually in every recent book.
كلا أب كلتشن عصر شومنتن أبي أحمد مسمت نتي ناي سلام سممع مونغو إيرتران إثيوبيان كم زقبرون ني أبزي أنا إتي تافت يونيفرسيتي تمهارايديو ولا بروفيسور نايتا تافت يونيفرسيتي زغنا أليكس دوال زبهال حدا غابتهم حوحات بروباغانديستيو أنصار إيرتران ني إيرترا ታሪኽን ከመይ ጠማዚዙ ከም ዝጽሕፎ ኣብዚ ጀፍ ፒርስ ይጽሕፍ
And if journalists and reporters turned historians aren't talking to Deval, they're making pilgrimages to Martin Plot, still riding a credibility wave for covering Africa for the BBC.
ስለዚ ደዋል እንተ ደኣ ደዋል ሰባት ሂስቶሪያንስ ንኣብነት ዝኾነ ሪፖርት ክጽሕፉ ተደልዮም ንደዋል እንተ ደኣ ዘይረኺቦሞ ወይ ደዋል ሓሳብ ክወስዱ ተደሊክ ኢሎም ካብ መን ወስዱ ካልእ ካብ ማርቲን ፕላውት ናይ ኣፍሪካ ናይ ቢቢሲ ኣፍሪካ ዝበሃል ሪፖርተር እዮም እዚኣቶም ኩሎም ነቲ ታሪክ ናይቲ ዞባ ጠምዚዞም ዘቕርቡ ሰባት እዮም
Yet even Plot had to acknowledge that the TPLF attacked Asmara first, reporting on November 14, 2020 that a residential complex at the Sembel residential complex, which is home to some 1,200 families in the southwest of the city, is said to have received a missile strike.
ኣብ 2020 ሕወሓት ናብ ሰምበል መጥቃዕቲ ገይሩ ናብ ኣስመራ ከባቢ 1200 ስድራ ቤታት ዘቕመጡሉ ቦታ እዩ እዚ ማርቲን ፕላውት ጽሒፎ ነይሩ ኣብ ኤክስ ኣብ ግዜኡ ኣብ ሰዓቱ ማለት እዩ ኣብቲ ኖቨምበር 14 ኣቢሉ 2020 ሕጂ ኣብዛ ግዜ እዚኣ እታ ጽሕፍቲ እቲኣ የላን ኣይትረኽባን ኢኻ ኣብ ናይ ማርቲን ፕላውት ምኽንያቱ ኦፍ ኮርስ ኦብቪየስሊ ናይ ሕወሓት ፕሮፓጋንዲስት ስለዝኾነ
There is reported to be a blackout in the city, with some people fleeing the urban area. Interestingly, this story is now missing from Martin's archives, and Martin is an online packrat who usually keeps everything. Even the aggregated post I wrote years ago about historians getting Ethiopian history wrong is still archived on his site.
ስለዚ እንታይ ድብል ዘሎ ማርቲን ፕላውት ዝኾነ ጽሑፍ ዝኣኻኽብ ሰብ እዩ ዝኾነ ይኹን ጽሑፍ እንድሕር ዳደሊኻ ክትረኽቦ ትኽእል ኢኻ እንተኾነ ግን ነዛ ጽሕፍቲ 14 ኖቨምበር 2020 ሕወሓት ሚሳይል ናብ ሰምበል ናብ ኣስመራ ዝሰንደወላ ከባቢ 1200 ስድራ ቤታት ዝቕመጣሉ ኤለክትሪክ ሙሉእ ከም ዝጠፍእ ኮይኑ ነዚኣ ኣሊዋ ኣሎ እታ ኣነ ዝጸሓፍክዋ Ethiopian history getting Ethiopian history wrong ትብል ግን ኣብናቱ ኣርካይቭ ግን ትረኽባ ኢኻ
But not the missile attack. If you even try to trace the story through his X links, it sends you to some weird gambling spam site.
ስለዚ እታ ናይ ሚሳይል መጥቃዕቲ ናይ ሕወሓት ካብታ ናቱ ናይ ኤክስ ኣሊዋ እዩ ካብቲ ናይ ትዊተር ምዃኑ እዩ ንዓ ክደልያልካ ክሊክ ምስ ገብር ግን ናብ ሓደ ናይ ስካም ወይ ስፓም ናይ ጋምብሊንግ ሳይት ከም ዝወስደካ ሓደ ዌብሳይት ናብ ካልእ ከም ዝወስደካ which is ኣሊዋ እዩ ማለት እዩ ንዓ
But let's fast forward to today. Abiy has gone full Idi Amin, slaughtering Amhara and persecuting Gurij, Afar and other peoples, jailing journalists and activists, and wiping out historical districts of Addis Ababa for the megalomaniacal dream of recreating the capital with shiny glass boxes. Eritrea, once an ally, is now an enemy because the Mad King has decided he wants ocean-front property. But as I've just explained,
ስለዚ ናብ አብይ አሕመድ ይመጽእ ህዝቡ ይጭፍጭፍ ኣሎ ኣብ 2020 ድማ አብይ አሕመድ ኣብ ጎኒ መንግስቲ ኤርትራ ነቲ ወይ ኣብ ጎኑ ኮይኑ ዝሓገዞ መንግስቲ አንጻሩ ኮይኑሎ ልክዕ ከም ናይ በዓል ኢዲ አሚን ድማ ንህዝቡ ድጭፍጭፍ ዘሎ ሰብ እዩ ይብለሎ
Ethiopia's historical claim to any part of the Red Sea will sink into the sand under proper scrutiny.
እዚ ድማ አብይ አሕመድ ናይ ባሕሪ ዝብል አጀንዳ ስለ ዘምፀ እዩ እዚ ዝኾነ ይኹን ናይ ኢትዮጵያውያን ባሕሪ ትብል አርእስቲ እንተዳ ኣምጽዮም ከምዚ ኣብ ሑጻ ዝኣተወ ማይ ክጠፍኡ ምዃኖም እዩ ዝሕብር ታንክ ዩ
It doesn't matter whether you support Israelis or not, it's absurd.
بزي قدسني إساياس تلليها دقفو أي تدقفو كم زعينة أرستي ممتاع مالتنا بحكي عبدان ترايو thank you.
Now if you want to talk about a cooperative arrangement for access to the sea, that's a different thing, but the Trump-style chest beating has likely, I suspect, only earned a Canadian-style yawn from Asmara. If you're lucky.
ስለዚ ታይብል access ናይሲ ወይ ውን ናይሲ ኣፍ ደገ ረኺብካ ብኽራይን ብኻልእን ማለት እዩ access to the sea ምርካብ እዚ ካልእ እዩ ካብኡ ሓሊፉ ተሪፉ ግን ናይ ትራምፕ ስታይል ትራምፕ እንታይ ይገብር ዘሎ ንካናዳ ክትቕልላ የብል ንግሪንላንድ ክትቕልላ የብል ካልኦት ቦታታት ውን ክትቕልል የብል ስለዚ ብዙሓት ቦታታት ማለት እዩ አብይ አሕመድ ከምኡ ዓይነት ስታይል ክኽተል እዩ ዝደሊ ዘሎ ከምኡ ዓይነት ስታይል እንተ ደኣ ትኽተል ኣለኻ ኾንካ ይብል ናይ ካናዳ ዓይነት ስታይል ክመጸካ እዩ ካናዳ እንታይ እዩ ኢድካ እንዳምባሃውካ ማለት ምሻሎ መሰልቸው ኣብዚ በጽሑ ይብልካን ዛ ዓይነቱ ከምኡ ክመጸካ ዝኽእል ካብ ኣስመራሲ ክትንዕቐካ እያ ዛ ዓይነቱ እዩ
It's really not a good idea to piss off the folks who just helped you win a war and who know how your army works.
ስለዚ ይብል ነገድ it's really not a good idea to piss off the folks who just helped you win a war and who knows how your army works. ናይ ብሓቂ ነቶም ዝሓገዙኻ ህዝብታትን ሰራዊት ዘለዎምን ኣብ ኩናት ዝሓገዙኻን ከተሕርቕ ጽቡቕ ነገር ኣይኮነን ስለዚ ስጥራይ ደይኮነን ሰራዊትካ ከመይ ከም ሰርሑን ጽቡቕ ገይሮም ከይፈልጥዎ እዮም
I have no particular love or care for the Eritrean regime, and every time an obvious government troll challenges me on X, the best way to shut them up is to remind them their country hasn't had a free election in decades. But neither am I going to fudge the history and pretend Eritrea didn't get a raw deal in its past.
ስለዚ እንታይ ደብልሉ ኣነ ድንጋጸ ወይ እውን ፍትወት መንግስቲ ኤርትራ ስለ ዘለኒ ይኮነን ገለገለ ሰባት ኣብ ኤክስ መጽኦም አንጻሪ ክጽሕፉ ይኽእሉ አንጻሪ ገለ ክብሉ ይኽእሉ ስቆሉ ኣፍኩም ሓዙ ክብሎም ይኽእል ይብል እንትኾነ ግን ወላውን መንግስቲ ኤርትራ ከምዚኡ ከምቲኡ ይበሃል እምበር ነቲ ሕሉፍ ታሪኽ ክትጥምዝዝ ዝከኣል ኣይኮነን ኤርትራ ድማ ማለት ብሕማቕ ኣይሓለፈትን እቲ ዝሓለፈቶ ድማ ሽግር ኣይነበሮን ክንብልሲ ኣይንኽእልን ኢና ብሓፈሻ ማለት እዩ
And whatever its internal politics at the moment, that doesn't mean the foaming at the mouth warmongers at the Washington think tanks are justified in trying to provoke a new conflict in the Horn. As with Ethiopians, as with Burmese, Turks, Iranians, Kurds, etc. My sympathies will always be with people, not a regime or a state or a ideology. What does any of this have to do with Brigade Namedu? A lot, as it turns out. Because this terrorist group is useful in a larger sense to Western media, which can't seem to get away from serving as a tool for European and American neocolonial interests.
ስለዚ እዚ ኣምጽዮ ዘለኹ ኣርእስቲ ብዛዕባ ኤርትራ ብዛዕባ ካልእንሲ እንታይ ዳ ምስ ብርጌድ ንሓመዱ ዘተኣሳስር ዘለዎ ይብል ጽቡቕ ገይሩ ዘተኣሳስር ዘለዎ ምክንያቱ እዚኦም ብርጌድ ንሓመዱ ናይ ምዕራባውያን መሳርሒ ናቲ neocolonial interest ናይ ዓብልል ገብት interest ገናዞ interest ዘሳስዩ ኣካላት ስለ ዝኾኑ ይደልይዎም እዮም ይዝብለና ደሎ ልክዕ ኣብዚኣ እስኪ ታጽሕፍቲ ትብለላ ገናዞ ንጉጅለ ኣጎናይ ይፍንፍንዎም ከም ዘለዉ ከምቲ ብተደጋጋሚ ንብሎ እዩ ኤርትራ ሃገርና ተቐያማይ እምበር ተቃዋማይ ዝበሃል የብላን ከዳዕ ገበነኛ እምበር ተቃዋማይ የብላን ጃሱስ ዕሱስ ዳ እምበር ተቃዋማይ ዝበሃል የብላን ብነብሰ ምትሓት ዝሳቀ ተወልጀ ድቃላ ግራፍ ፍርቃ ፍንፉን ዓሌት ዳእምበር ተቃዋማይ ዝበሃል ፈጺሙ የብላን ኤርትራና ጸቢብ አውራጃዊ ቁሸታዊ ዳእምበር ተቃዋማይ ዝበሃል ፈጺሙ የብላን ልክ እዚ አያቲ ጀፍ ፒሪስ አውጥዮ ዝነበረ ገለኻኡ ማለት እዩ
As I wrote only a couple of weeks ago, these media operations suddenly, collectively decided it was time to jump up and down again and remind everyone that Tigrayans were in danger, Tigrayans were in danger. To hell with Amhara getting murdered every day, their chosen, worthy, victims needed attention. Because of Abiy's foolish saber rattling.
Look, ገለ ምዕራባውያን ብዙሓት ናይ ምዕራባውያን ሚድያታት ትግራዎት ይጭፍጨፉለው ትግራዎት ይጭፍጨፉለው ዝብል ሚድያታት ንርኢና ህዝቡ መሓራኸ እቲ ህዝቡ መሓራ ዝጭፍጨፍ ዘለኸ
What this means is that every time Brigade Namedu hits an Eritrean festival, like brown shirts smashing Jewish shop windows, an app reporter can insert this boilerplate summary. Human rights groups describe Eritrea as one of the world's most repressive countries.
ልክ ስለዚ እንታይ ይድብል ዘሎ እዞም ኣድግን ሓመዱ ፌስቲቫላትን ገለና ኤርትራውያን ከዕኑ ከለው በዓል ኣሶሺየትድ ፕሬስ ይኹን ካልኦት እንታይ እዮም ዝገብሩ ሓደ ካብቶም ናይ ኣፍሪቃ እንታይ ይበሃል ሪፕሬሲቭ ዝኾኑ መንግስታት ተሃሪሞም ዝብል ኣጀንዳታት ወይ ጽሑፋት እየን ዘውፁ እዚ ጀስቲፋይ ንምግባር ነቲ ዝገብርዎ ዘለዉ እዚ ነቲ ናቶም ኒዮኮሎናል ዝኾነ ተሓሳስባ ንኽጥዕሞም ስለ ዝደልዩ ዘለዉ እዩ ነቲ መንግስቲ ኤርትራ ዘሎ ከኣሊዎ ንዝደልይዎ ናታቶም ኮፍ ከብሉ ስለ ዝደልዩ ዘለዉ እዩ
Since winning independence from Ethiopia 3 decades ago, the small Horn of Africa nation has been led by President Isaias Afwerki, who has never held an election. Want to make your point? Beat up an old man. The problem is that even the mighty app can't always pull a cosmetic job on what the group is doing. In a 2023 article that is more forthright, David Keaton wrote this about the Brigade Nሓመዱ attacking a festival in a Stockholm suburb. The protesters set booths and vehicles ablaze, sending smoke billowing into the sky. Swedish newspaper Expressen reported that up to 1,000 protesters marched towards the festival grounds, pushing past police cordons and using sticks and rocks as weapons. It is not simply terrorism here, it's fascism. The Nazis did stuff like this. The black shirts of Mussolini went around beating up tourists, political rivals, even an American diplomat, in the early 1930s. In a refreshingly balanced piece about the attack on the Toronto Festival in 2023, Catherine Deklick of CTV News interviewed witnesses and relatives of those assaulted. Her article deserves to be quoted at length. Danette Meritib told CTV News Toronto that her 60-year-old father was helping set up for the festival and was passing out volunteer T-shirts when a group of protesters descended upon Earls Court Park, near Caledonia Road and St. Clair Avenue West on Saturday. The aunties, like the mothers, they were cooking and making food. The protesters dumped all the food, they were shoving them to the ground, threatening to burn their clothes, they pushed down the fences, she said. That's what was happening when my dad heard, "That's him, get him," and then he said that they hit him over the head with a metal rod and continued to beat him while he was down. Meritib said her father lost consciousness and was left for dead. He had to get 12 staples on the top of his skull and suffered a fracture to the spine. This is one of the few articles I can find where we actually hear from the real victims, not spokespersons for the terrorist group. Yet the thugs still got what they wanted. Thanks to their attack on innocent people and even police officers, the authorities revoked the park permit for the Eritrean festival, essentially rewarding the mayhem. I have to return to the point about cowardice. It is a coward who attacks people when they least expect it, listening to music, eating food, enjoying their culture, having a good time and minding their own business. You don't like what the festival represents. Hold your own. But this is not good enough for Brigade Nሓመዱ. Anyone else would simply picket an embassy or heckle a consul or ambassador during a speech at a chamber of commerce or something. These thugs attack the culture festivals for the very reason that they are vulnerable, that ordinary people can be terrorized. In Israel that same year, they got bolder and started a riot when the Eritrean embassy held an event marking the country's independence, which it was fully entitled to do. That's the whole point of embassies. The code of diplomacy is that your legation is sacrosanct, that your envoys, right or wrong, are supposed to enjoy the courtesies and protection of the host nation. But after Al Jazeera got through the familiar boilerplate summary of Eritrea's ills, we were told in its coverage that protesters broke through police barriers as officers appeared unprepared for such large numbers, and videos showed smashed windows of police and other cars as well as damage to nearby stores. The venue was also vandalized with chairs and tables smashed. More than 100 people, including several dozen police officers, were injured during the fighting between rival groups. Not surprisingly, Al Jazeera has no quotes in the story from pro-government supporters. And all this nastiness just gave Benjamin Netanyahu another excuse to promise he would expel African migrants. This is what Martin Plaut is defending. He wrote a nauseatingly supportive profile of Brigade Nሓመዱ on his website and managed to somehow not mention once the terrorists' attacks on people. The nearest he came to this was to suggest the organization was formed after its thugs started a riot in Gießen, Germany in 2022. Its own chronology hardly matters. Remember that the German authorities hold the group directly responsible for what happened at Gießen in August of 2022. But I believe its conceptual birth goes back further, and that Martin Plaut is this terrorist group's spiritual and intellectual stepdaddy. In April of 2019, he gave a speech in London to Eritrean activists, telling them, journalists are very simple, one-celled organisms. They look for things, they gobble them up, but you got to find something to gobble. We need to make the news. And this is not as difficult as it sounds, but it is really important. A demonstration outside the Eritrean embassy is not news. It may make you feel better, but it's happened hundreds of times, but it is not news, sick. All of this was true, as I pointed out to indignant Ethiopians in 2021 when they thought they found some kind of smoking gun and plastered Twitter and Facebook with this video clip.
ኣብዚ ኣብታ ናይ ማርቲን ፕላውት እዩ ጽሒፉ ዘሎ ኣብታ ናይ 2019 ጋዜጠኛታት ሓደ ዜና ይስንዑ ሓሶት ይኹን ወይ ዝኾነ ነገር ይስንዑ ክንስናዕ ኣለና ኢሉ ካልእ ናብ ኤምባሲ ኤርትራ ኣይትኸይዱ እንታይ ዕላማ ኣለኩም ከተቃጽሉ መደባት ተዘየለኩም ሕጅዝ እንታይ ይዘርኢ ከይድኩም ኣቃጽሉ ፌስቲቫላት ኣቃጽሉ ማለት ምዃኑ ብተሓደ ወገኑ ኢንካሬጅ ወይ እውን ምትብባዕ ምዃኑ ንዓቶም ብድሕሪኡ ሰዓበ ርኢና ኢና ስለዚ ንማርቲን ፕላውድ ስቴፕ ዳድ እንታይ ይባሃል ስቴፕ ዳድ ከምዚ ሰብኣይ እንታይ ይባሃል ሰብኣይ ቦዲ ሰብኣይ ኣደ ዝበሃል ልክዕ ከምኡ ማለት እዩ ዝኸውን ዘሎ ማርቲን ፕላውድ ንዞም ሰባት እዚኣቶም በቃ ንስኡ ነዚ ማስተር ማይንድ ኮይኑ ብድሕሪኡ ኮይኑ ዘዝውን ዘተባብዖም ዘሎ ማለት እዩ
I groaned and muttered, big deal. I was wrong, but not for their reasons. What no one could foresee, probably not even Martin himself, were the long-term results of the off-the-cuff advice he gave next. Wagging his finger at his audience, he told them, do not go and have another demonstration outside the Eritrean embassy unless you're going to burn it down. His audience thought this was hilarious. Which I didn't say, he quickly added with a sly smile. Yeah, ha, 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 message received. At the time when the clip was floating around in 2021, I still thought, big deal and didn't see anything significant in this callous joke. But obviously, someone was paying attention. Someone realized, yeah, that's the ticket. Burn. Beat the shit out of people. Go nuts. That'll get us coverage. And lo and behold, it has. I am sure it was not his intention, but there's certainly blood on his hands thanks to this foolish remark.
ስለዚ ድሕርታ ኣብ 2019 ዝተዛረባ ማርቲን ፕላውት ኣብ ሓደ ኣኼባ ኩልና ድረኣናዮ ቪድዮ ማለት እዩ ገለ ሰባት ኦኬ በአርከም ማለት ኢሎም ከቃጽሉን ንዓብ ክገብሩን ጀሚሮም ስለዚ ማርቲን ፕላውት ኣብ ኢዱ ደም ዘለዎ ሰብ ምዃኑ እዩ ኣብጽሒቡ ዘሎ
I suspect it's why Martin wrote an entire profile of a terrorist group without mentioning what it does. What other choice did he have? These are his spiritual children. To even allude to the violence is to implicate himself. And now Brigade Nሓመዱ feels entitled to wage its bloody violence on German institutions and police offices. And no doubt on institutions and police offices in other spots of Europe and likely Canada. I suspect, at least hope, they will not try this shit in the States, not anymore because in the new racist political landscape of Trumpism, that is a plain ticket to call them what they are, concentration camps outsourced for America like Indian call centers.
ስለዚ እዚ ድማ እንታይ ያስዒቡ ኣብ ሙሉእ ዩሮፕ ይኹን ኣብ ካልኦት ሃገራት ኣብ ካናዳን ካልእን እስራኤልን ናዕቢ ክገብሩ ኣተባቢዕዎም ሎሚ ግን ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ነዚ ክገብርዎ እውን ክሓስቡ ኣይክእሉን እዮም ምክንያቱ ትራምፕ ስደተኛታት ብብዝሒ ኣኺሉ ተሪፍኒኡ ስለ ዝብል ዘሎ ይሰጉግ እውን ስለ ዘሎ ወይ እውን ናብ ሓደ ኮንሰንትሬሽን ካምፕ ይእትዩ ክሽግሮም ከም ዝኽእሉ ኣጸቢቖም ይፈልጡ እዮም ማለት እዩ
European authorities have begun to wake up, however, to the magnitude of the danger. A Dutch court apparently gave a tough prison sentence of several years to a Brigade Nሓመዱ thug on account of his participation in clashes in The Hague. I highly suspect that, as usual, Canadian authorities, ever dumb and slow to navigate multicultural nuances, will arrive at the logical conclusion late.
ስለዚ ኤውሮጳውያን ሕጂ እንዳተበራበሩ ይኸዱለው ናይዚ ኣብነት ድማ ኣብ ኔዘርላንድስ ወይ ደ ሄግ ኣብ ናይ ሆላንድ ሓደ ካብቶም መራሕቲ ዝነበሩ ጆን ብላክ ተባሂሉ ዝፅዋዕ ማለት እዩ እዚ ኣብ ትሕቲ ቀይዲ ይእትዮም ኣለዉ ካናዳ እውን ነዚ ጉዳይ እዚ ናይ ዩሮፕ ዝግበር ዘሎ ብዝግባእ ከተስተውዕለሉን ኣብ መስርሕ ከተእትዎን ጻውዒት ይቐርብ ኣሎ
Maybe too late. Lives will get lost because there is a common escalation with terrorist groups. It doesn't take much to graduate from a metal rod beating a 60-year-old Eritrean in Toronto to trying to leave a bomb that could go off at the Frankfurt airport. These idiots don't care. Innocent Eritreans, and Ethiopians and Somalis because white cops and even whiter governments often can't make distinctions, will get shoved into the back of wagons and go through harrowing ordeals. And the idiots won't care. It is time for the world to call them out for the evil they perpetrate. I personally don't give a damn whether your politics are correct about the regime. You call yourself
ስለዚ ግዜኡ ኣኺሊኡ ዓለም ብምልእታ ነዞም ኣሸበርቲ እዚኣቶም ኣሸበርቲ ኢላ ኣብ ትሕቲ ቁፅር ክትእትወሎም ክትእቶም ዘለዋ ግዜ እዩ ኣነ ኣይገድሰንን እዩ ተደሊኹም ደጋፊ መንግስቲ ወይ እውን ተናቅስ ክትብልዎ ትኽእሉ ኢኹም እንተኾነ ግን እቲ ሓቂ እዞም ኣሸበርቲ እዚኣቶም ኩሉ ሰራርሖም ዘበለ ናይ ዕንወት እዩ ይጸልኦሜ ዝገብርዎ ድማ ኩሉ ብምልኡ عنوت ስለዝኾነ ኣብ ትሕቲ ቁጥጥር ከኣትው ክኽእሉ ኣለዎም
Selves Brigade Namedu, but your reasoning is TPLF logic. I think this guy is a dictator, so I'll hold the gun to the head of a woman who hangs an Eritrean flag outside her apartment window. I don't like the country's lack of a free press, so it's natural I go shoot a cop in Berlin.
ስለዚ ዞም ሰባት እዚኣቶም ንዲክቴተር እዮም ዝድግፉ ወይ እውን ከምዚኦም ዝድግፉ ኢልካ ንኻልእ ሰብ ኣብ ደገ ዝረኽብካዮ ባንዴራ ዝሓዘን ገለን ምቕታልን ምህራምን ምዕማፅን እዚ ጆ ክብል ኣለዎ ወይ እውን እዚ ቅቡል ኣይኮነን
You need to be stopped. I can appreciate the hesitation of innocent Eritreans not speaking up over you directly, but I do hope that they will flood the phone lines at the Associated Press, the BBC, the AFP and Reuters and make it clear, these are not heroes, these are predators.
ድሮን አለና ዝበለኩም ኪሮስ ኣብጅጋ ሆን ዘሎ ድሮን ቦምብ ለና ዝበለኩም አባንኩኩም ዘሎ ቦምብ ገንዘብ
አትና አይንህብን ናይንዳማትና ኸ አይንደልን بجهران فخران تسنابدنا تنبركيخنا تسعرنا انفلتنا زفكرون زتجاهرون من سلازرانان سلازربربنا لون ካብ ቋንቋ ምህዳድን ሓይልን ወፂና ብዓቕልን ልዝብን ከይተሓለልና ንሰርሕ ኢና ሓቅን ፍትሕን ምእንቲ ረብሓታት ህዝብታት ኤርትራን ኢትዮጵያን ከም ዝዕወታን ዝበለጸን ዘተኣማምንን ሰላም ክሰፍን ከም ዝኾነ ኸኣ ኣይጠራጠርን
ዓይነ ሓሳባት ከይህልዎ ዝማይ ዓይነ ንስርሎ ዝሕሉ ካብ ሰማይ በትሪ ሙሴ ስቑኢሉ ይሓለፎን ደም ጀጋኑን ኾንቱ ይፈሰሶን ደም ጀጋኑን ኾንቱ ይፈሰሶን
ሼር ላይክ ሳብስክራይብ ምግባር ኣይትረስዑ Thank you.